Hello, BookTube. It's time for the September reading wrap up. I must admit, it wasn't as productive a month as I hoped it would be. It's a little under the weather, for the most part. So unfortunately, I only read three. I got one novel and two plays. To start things off with the novel I read. It was part of the Stephen King book club that I'm a part of on Fable. And September's selection was The Gunslinger, the book one of the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I first read this book back when I was in high school. It's a long time ago, and I enjoyed it, but I never got around to finishing it, and I never read the series afterwards. So it was nice to dive back in. And rather than reading it again this time, I got the audiobook on Spotify. You get those 15 free hours a month. So I discovered that the audiobook for not just The Gunslinger, but six of the seven books are narrated by one of my favorites, a man named George Guidall. First came across him because he narrates to this day all the books from one of my favorite series, like the Walt Longmire mystery series. So when I saw his name was attached to The Gunslinger, I immediately decided to listen to it, not just read it. I say with The Gunslinger, one thing confused me about the reception it gets. I've always heard a lot of people say, "Oh, it's you can skip over," which I don't understand why you would do that because it is what it is. It's an introduction to this world. Also, Stephen King was very young when he wrote it too, so it's still you get to see how his work evolved over time. This one originally, I think it wasn't a full novel; it was like a series of stories he wrote for publications, put all together in this world of sci-fi, fantasy, some kind of trippy dialogue at times, the very sign of the times. Yeah, our main character, Roland the Gunslinger. Follow him as he's chasing after the Man in Black, and there's talk of something he's seeking called the Dark Tower. What is the Dark Tower? We don't even know. As a matter of fact, Roland doesn't even know. But whatever it is, he thinks he's got to find answers there. And the man in path stands in it. The man in black stands in his way. So this book, one of an introduction, I'm hooked already. So I'm looking forward to reading the other six books, and preferably I'll get the audiobooks since George Guidall narrates most of them. As for the two plays I read two plays by William Shakespeare for the reading event Shake-tember, which is hosted by Nicole, Emily, and Jason. I'll link their channels down below for everybody. As you can tell by the name Shake-tember, we read Shakespeare throughout the month of September. I decided to read two tragedies. First, I will start with the big one, like Hamlet. You know, of course, to be or not to be, it's the one line. Even if you never read Shakespeare, you're probably familiar with that one quote. It's just fascinating. It was the story of a young Prince Hamlet. He finds his father's dead. The father died. He was like bitten by a snake in the garden, died from the poisoning. Now his uncle Claudius takes the throne and marries Hamlet's mother. But of course, in the middle of the night, Hamlet's friends, when they're on post in the guard duty, they report they see a ghost. So Hamlet goes to encounter this ghost himself, and he discovers that this ghost is in fact his father. The father delivers the news to his son Hamlet. Actually, both the father and son have the same name. So the king, the deceased king, reveals to his son Hamlet that he was in fact poisoned by his brother Claudius. And it was fascinating too. As you read like part of the little introduction to the history of this behind this, there was a rediscovering of different themes from ancient writings. One of them being the notion of spirits returning from the afterlife seeking revenge. We see that here, like when Hamlet encounters the ghost of his father. First, he doesn't even recognize him because the ghost is dressed in armor. He definitely got ready for battle, and he definitely wants to seek revenge on his brother. So yeah, Hamlet's a very conflicted guy. Definitely an emotional guy. Like he's not exactly like your dashing hero. Like obviously he's a prince, so he knows how to fence. He knows he's trained in combat and whatnot. When push comes to shove, he's not as like forthgoing as a hero normally would be in this story. It's like he has to avenge his father, but he's very conflicted about it. Even like one scene. Long story short, one scene his uncle Claudius is like it's like praying and confessing his sins. So Hamlet takes this opportunity, think, ooh, like this is my chance to kill my uncle and avenge my father's death. But as Hamlet's about to standing over, about to kill him, looks at the religious altar and he starts fearing for his own soul too. It's like, ooh, like what's going to happen to my own soul if I kill my uncle while he's confessing? He's a very conflicted guy. A lot of different themes going on in here too. One thing I have to point out in this play that really touched me on a personal level, there's a line in here. First time I've ever heard it, it's one of my all-time favorite quotes I've ever heard anywhere. It's like after Hamlet talks to the ghost of his father and finds about the murder and whatnot, he tells the news to his friends. So I go, that was his ghost, and like they're all like finding it hard to believe, like his actual spirit, whatnot. And like apparently Hamlet's friend Horatio is kind of a disbeliever in some way, and Hamlet says this line to him. It just grabbed me right as soon as I heard it. Like Hamlet tells his friend Horatio, like there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, that are dreamt of in your philosophy. So that just got to me on a personal note, because one of the joys of BookTube, you're reading, discovering new things, and I've been dabbing into philosophy myself. And truth be told, I think it's mostly a complete waste of time, to be honest. Like, you're talking about stuff that's beyond us, you'll never understand. So, like, what are we really discussing here? When it comes to philosophy too, I'm more interested in like words about like everyday people, or like real people, for real everyday people, regardless of when in history they lived, such as like Marcus Aurelius in his book Meditations, or even recent figures like Muhammad Ali. So that's the kind of philosophy I'm interested in. So the fact that Hamlet tells his friend Horatio that like there are more things in heaven and earth than you can dream of, it just tickled me in the right way. And for the second play I read, this is honestly one of my all-time favorite stories. It is The Tragedy. Apparently it's such a tragedy that a lot of actors genuinely think it's bad luck to say the title of this name in the theater. It is Macbeth. Just think a little backstory about Macbeth too. This is real life in England at the time. Queen Elizabeth I had passed away, leaving no heirs. Next in line for the throne was a man from Scotland. So you have a Scottish king now. So, for lack of a better word, Scotland was trendy. That's when Shakespeare wrote two of his plays that involve Scotland. You have Macbeth and King Lear. In the very beginning of this play, Macbeth is visited by three witches. They tell him the prophecy that he will be king. And not only that, but Macbeth's best friend Banquo, like Banquo's sons will be future kings. So they take this philosophy. Now, Macbeth, like you heard from the witches that you will be king one day. And then Macbeth, like he writes this letter to his wife, Lady Macbeth, telling him of this philosophy. He's to be king one day, and she really like sets her sights on the crown. He's conflicted that he's like having thoughts about like killing the king, his friend, and just taking the throne. But he's so conflicted about it. He's like what if it goes wrong? And he's the one he has to actually commit the murder himself. But no, his wife, Lady Macbeth, is like practically like bullies him and like tests his manhood. Like she's like pushing him. Like she really wants him to do this because she wants the crown too. And let's see. And of course, we see these people like this in everyday lives to some degree. Like the ones who push you to do something. Well, it's easy for you to say. Like Macbeth is the one who actually has to carry out this deed. So of course he's thinking about all the consequences, whereas Lady Macbeth, she's like transfixed, and like she's just totally fixed on the end that she doesn't contemplate the fallout or anything that can go wrong. One personal reason, this stood out to me so well too. I'm not gonna go into details here. It's pretty heavy stuff, but like I've seen like something like this firsthand. Like you have people, like corrupt people, like they want something, they take it by force, let's say, and then what happens? Do they live peacefully afterwards with what they've taken? No, they all like turn mad from paranoia. Some of them are completely guilt-ridden, and I thought that was portrayed brilliantly. Especially like Macbeth, he carries out the deed. He starts going nuts and paranoid. Like he can't he's paranoid. He orders like his best friends to be murdered. And like Lady Macbeth, like she sees like what Macbeth is doing, and she's so guilt-ridden. there's a famous quote in here, like she's kind of goes mad. She thinks she sees like blood on her hands. She keeps trying to wipe off the spot, as she calls it, the spot, like because she's gone mad from the guilt. Like it is the very definition of a tragedy, folks. Definitely well worth the read. We go back to Hamlet for 1 second. There's a fantastic roundtable discussion video that I found here on YouTube. I'll link it in the description box below. It was like a roundtable discussion from like 1962 with Peter O'Toole and Orson Welles, and another older man who I wasn't familiar with. Quick side note: if you ever, well, first of all, the three of them, they talk about Hamlet. All three of them played Hamlet. They break down the ghost and different thoughts. And I wanted to share this clip too because if you ever get intimidated by Shakespeare and reading it, I want you to remember this line. Like these three men, Orson Welles, Peter O'Toole, and this other fellow, three of the most revered people in their profession, history. They're doing this roundtable discussion, and the host of this program asked these three men, like, why didn't Hamlet just kill his uncle and avenge his father's death at the beginning? And these three very revered men all agreed on the same thing. Hamlet couldn't kill his uncle and avenge his father's death at the beginning because there were still 5 acts to go. I want y'all to remember that if you ever feel intimidated by reading Shakespeare one day. Don't make it more complicated than it has to be. Anyway, folks, September is done. Now it's time for October. Got some spooky reading to do. You see, I'm recording this like Monday morning. Currently, I'm almost done with Frankenstein. I'll probably be done with this by the end of the day. Another book I just started too. It's one of the best biographies I've ever read. Of course, I will get into this in my October wrap-up. This is a book called The Secret Life of Houdini. Now, in a lot of ways, like after all, it is spooky season. There are a lot of spooky elements about Houdini's life and his passing and afterlife that are very appropriate for this season. Of course, we'll get into that a little bit later. All right, folks, I got some reading to do. Happy October, happy Halloween, happy spooky season.